Enron filed for bankruptcy, setting off one of the biggest corporate scandals in history.
Gabby Petito's death has now ignited new interest in finding other missing persons.
The entire country and really the entire world trying to find Gabby Petito.
For the most part, we go through our daily lives, living, doing things, working, hanging out with our families, and we don't think too much about the tragedies that are unfolding behind the scenes. However, there are people out there who are not like us, and these people, they take the depths of infamy to the next level with their heinous actions. And they get themselves famous for all of the worst and wrong reasons. Join us as we have a look at 10 crazy crime cases that shock the world. Number 1. The Human Butcher. Friedrich Heinrich Karl Fritz Harman, born 25th of October 1879 in Hanover, Germany, grew up with a troubled childhood. He exhibited effeminate behavior, dressing in his sister's clothing, and developed an unsettling fascination with his mother. His life would take a dark turn as he engaged in petty crimes and served time in prison. However, it was after World War I, during the post-war poverty and chaos, that he escalated into a depraved serial criminal. Between 1918 and 1924, he would terrorize Hanover, attacking, behaving inappropriately, mutilating, and dismembering at least 24 young men and boys, with suspicions of even more victims. His preferred method of assault was biting through his victims' throats, earning him the chilling nicknames of the Butcher of Hanover, the Vampire of Hanover, and the Wolfman. Most of his victims were lured to his apartment under the pretense of help or work or accommodations, all before meeting their gruesome fate. His reign of terror came to an end in 1924 when police would find stolen items that linked him to several burglaries. A subsequent search of his apartment revealed the shocking truth: the remains of his victims, leading to his arrest. Under intense scrutiny and evidence that was mounting against him, he was then apprehended and faced the justice system, and in December of 1924 would be charged with taking 27 lives, but was found guilty of taking 24. He was sentenced to death by beheading. The court also revoked his honorary rights of citizenship, and in April 1925, he faced his fate and was executed by guillotine. Following his execution, his brain was examined, revealing traces of meningitis. His head was then preserved in formaldehyde until 2014, after finally being cremated. The remains of his victims would be buried together in the same grave in a cemetery, and a marble sculpture was built in their honor. Fear had surpassed the city of Hanover as a result of the public's horror over his horrible deeds. The case would gain extensive coverage in the press, which revealed the horrible details of the lives he had taken, provoking outrage and calls for justice. In the collective memory of the German people, his name came to be associated with evil. Number 2. The disappearance of Gabby Petito. Gabby Petito was a 22-year-old woman and content creator who had been traveling across the country with her fiancé, Brian Landry. In August of 2021, their story would intrigue the entire country. On July 2nd of 2021, they left for their trip with intentions of traveling for 4 months. However, Petito's unexplained disappearance in the last part of August of that year would turn their dream into a nightmare. As the search for her grew more intense, suspicions then turned to her fiancé Brian, who had exhibited strange behaviors after she went missing. He had returned their van to his parents' house in Florida after having driven back from Wyoming, refusing to assist the police or even reveal where her body's location was. He would be identified as a person of interest in the investigation, and an arrest warrant issued for him for allegedly using Petito's debit card to make illegal withdrawals. However, before law enforcement could apprehend him, he himself went missing, setting off a massive manhunt. The case would gain significant public attention due to the couple's active presence on social media. They had documented their travels quite extensively, sharing their adventures with followers on platforms like YouTube and Instagram. Leaked police body camera footage from a domestic disturbance incident in Utah even added to the intrigue that surrounded their relationship. In that incident, witnesses would report seeing Petito and Landry engaged in a heated argument. She had claimed to have had bad OCD and apologized for her mood swings, while Brian described trying to calm her down during the altercation. Despite all of this, neither of them wanted to press charges, and the police had categorized it as a mental health breakdown rather than domestic violence. Then tragically later, her remains would be discovered, and an autopsy would reveal that she had died by manual strangulation. The discovery of her body had heightened public interest in the case, and a nationwide conversation about domestic violence and missing persons cases would ensue. The search for Brian would continue, with authorities combing the area where his last known location was. He had frequented the area in the past, and then in October of that year, his skeletal remains were discovered in a park, and forensic examination would confirm that he had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. His notebook, found near his remains, contained an admission of guilt for having taken Petito's life. The disappearance of Gabby Petito would spark public outrage and sympathy, highlighting the missing white woman syndrome. The case highlighted the need for equal coverage of missing persons cases regardless of race, gender, or social status, and her parents would file a lawsuit against Brian Landry's parents and the Moab Police Department. Number 3. Master Fraudster. American author and former criminal Frank William Abagnale Jr. was born on April 27th of 1948 and is well known for his amazing and audacious scams. Abagnale achieved popularity in the late 1970s by having claimed that he had staged a wide range of victimless workplace frauds, though many of these assertions have since been proven. He co-wrote the 1980 autobiography Catch Me If You Can, which had exposed his alleged frauds and served as the basis for the Steven Spielberg film of the same name, which starred Leonardo DiCaprio as Abagnale. He continues to operate Abagnale and Associates, a consultancy company, despite the controversy surrounding his claims. He's alleged to have made cons that range from impersonating an assistant state attorney general in Louisiana and a hospital physician in Georgia, to pretending to be a Pan American World Airways pilot who flew over 2 million air miles by deadheading. The veracity of these claims has been widely questioned, with ongoing inquiries finding evidence that many of them were fabricated. He himself admitted on his website in 2002 that certain facts in his life had been over-dramatized or exaggerated, though he did not specify which ones. Journalist Alan C. Logan in 2020 would provide evidence that suggested the majority of his story was invented or exaggerated, a claim that was independently verified by another journalist. Despite these controversies, his life story has captured the public's fascination, leading to a hit movie and numerous books about his exploits. Abagnale's early criminal activities involved cashing checks without sufficient funds in his account and impersonating a Pan Am pilot. He managed to obtain a Pan Am uniform by tricking the uniform supplier, and with a phony employee ID number, he convinced 3M to make him a Pan Am ID badge. He exploited his fake pilot status to hitch free rides across the country, which enabled him to commit fraud at many different locations. Throughout his criminal career, he had engaged in various cons, which included exploiting gas station attendants to purchase items with his father's credit card and converting them into cash. He created fake deposit slips with his account number, leading people to deposit money into his account inadvertently, and additionally, he impersonated a doctor and even passed the bar exam in Louisiana without having attended law school. Despite being caught on multiple occasions, he continued to invent new identities and deceive people, and managed to convince educational institutions, which included Brigham Young University, to hire him as a professor without having any legitimate credentials. After his arrest at Boston Airport, he rented a security guard uniform and convinced people to hand over their night deposits, further demonstrating his audacity and confidence in his abilities to deceive. And after having served a sentence for various crimes, he then turned his life around, establishing himself as an authority on fraud and deception. Now he consults corporate clients on how to protect themselves from con artists and provides law enforcement training on apprehending fraudsters. He also earns significant income from speaking engagements, where he shares his past experiences, offering insights on how to avoid falling victim to scams. Number 4. Casino Cheater. Richard Marcus is a name that has become synonymous with casino cheating and deception in Las Vegas. From an early age, Marcus displayed a natural affinity for gambling, engaging in friendly wagers, and games with his friends. However, it was a bitter lesson in childhood baseball card flipping that opened his eyes to the world of cheating and deception. The young Marcus was defeated by opponents who looked at his assortment to gain an unfair advantage, taking his precious collection of baseball cards. Marcus's initial encounter with dishonesty generated an obsessive curiosity that would eventually motivate him to engage in high-stakes fraud at the center of global gaming. Marcus traveled to Las Vegas in an effort to try his luck in the casinos after having experienced a little taste of success at the racetrack. He lost all of his previous gains that evening since Lady Luck was not on his side. He accepted a position as a dealer at the Four Queens Casino because he was determined to learn the game of gambling. He tirelessly studied the rules and mechanics of the games, paying close attention to the habits of other dealers that he might be able to take advantage of as a player. Marcus first met Joe Klassen, who would later serve as his mentor in the field of casino fraud, all while working as a dealer. He had decided to work with Klassen on his plan to pull off a baccarat scheme at the Four Queens Casino, and to make it possible for Klassen and his squad to win consecutive hands without the dealers recognizing foul play, Marcus came up with a plan to intentionally shuffle the cards. With the help of his partnership, they were able to make over $21,000. Marcus had developed these abilities to the point where he eventually outperformed Klassen's team and began leading his own group of cheaters. He then went out to carry out more complex schemes with his high school friend Andy Balls and another helper named Pat Mallory. The Savannah strategy, which involves concealing a $5,000 casino chip under a $5 chip and quickly moving them to collect a greater payoff when they won the bet, would be one of his signature moves. Marcus and his group had honed their skills in the extremely illegal practice of late betting, which involves placing wagers after the result of an event is already known. They specifically targeted tables for roulette, baccarat, blackjack, and poker, taking advantage of the space between the dealer and the last players to carry out their actions covertly. Before casino managers and game enforcement officials ultimately caught on to their strategies, they had been successful in getting away with this complex swindle hundreds of times. Formerly a successful casino cheater, Richard Marcus now focuses on assisting casinos in catching cheaters and enhancing security procedures. As a consultant and speaker, he imparts his knowledge of the gambling industry and his experiences and views, enlightening casino employees about fraud and strategies and weakness. Number 5. Billionaire heir kidnapped. Richard Oetker, born January 4th of 1951, is a German billionaire heir and businessman. He's the CEO of Dr. Oetker, a multinational food processing company, a position that he assumed in 2010. Richard is the son of Rudolf August Oetker and Suzanne, and he has 3 siblings. He would pursue studies in agronomy and brewing at the Technical University of Munich and had been associated with the family business since 1981 after taking over key roles due to his father's retirement as CEO. However, his life would take a dark turn in December of 1976 when he was actually kidnapped at the age of 25. Dieter Zloff, a Slovene-born mechanic, was the perpetrator behind the heinous act. Zloff imprisoned him in a small crate, securing his feet and wrists in manacles that would deliver electric shocks if he had attempted to escape or raise the alarm. The crate was incredibly cramped, being only 1.45 meters long and 70 centimeters wide, while Richard stood at a height of 1.94 meters. During his captivity, he experienced excruciating pain due to the electric shocks, and a near-fatal accident occurred when he thumped against the crate, breaking his thighs and 2 ribs. His screams would only intensify the shocks, which led to moments when he had actually contemplated death. The kidnapping ordeal would last for 47 hours until he was eventually freed after a ransom was paid. It was the highest ever in Germany at the time. He was discovered December 16th of 1976. The kidnapper then would be arrested in January of 1979 based on circumstantial evidence. Although he did not plead guilty, he received the maximum sentence of 15 years in prison. In a bizarre twist, Zloff traveled to England to exchange moldy banknotes that were part of the ransom. The rest of the ransom money had decayed in a hidden cache in a forest southeast of Munich. For these actions, Zloff would be arrested and then put in prison for 2 years. In his 1997 autobiography, which was written by his wife, Zloff confessed to the kidnapping. Otker's life was permanently impacted by this traumatic experience, and he suffered from the physical injuries sustained during that time in captivity, undergoing multiple operations up until 1994. For 4 years, he had relied on crutches and had to relearn standing and walking. Additionally, his lungs were damaged due to prolonged squatting inside of the crate. The dramatic events of his kidnapping inspired the 2001 film Dance with the Devil. The movie portrays the ransom incident, though Sloff's name was altered in the film for legal reasons. Despite the ordeal, Otker persevered and continued to lead the family business, and as of October of 2021, his net worth would be estimated at $2.7 billion, cementing his status as a prominent figure in the business world. Number 6. Sweden's National Museum robbery. The National Museum robbery, which took place in December of 2000 in Stockholm, Sweden, involved the robbery of 3 priceless paintings having a whopping worth of $30 to $45 million. A self-portrait by Rembrandt and 2 Renoir paintings, Conversation and Young Parisian, were amongst the stolen goods. The thieves employed a distraction tactic by having set off bombs in 2 cars at nearby hotels in order to stray the attention of the police. They then, armed with weapons, confronted the museum guards and stole the 3 paintings. They hid a motorboat in a nearby waterway and fled on it to avoid capture by spreading nails on the road to obstruct pursuing police cars. A lawyer working on behalf of the burglars sent the police a demand for several $1 million in ransom shortly after the robbery, and then, to support the claim, the demand supplied images of the allegedly stolen paintings. The police, however, declined to pay that ransom, and later that month, the 2 masterminds behind the robbery would be detained, with a lawyer who had served as their negotiator and a number of other collaborators. In July of that same year, they would be found guilty, and despite the arrests, it would take police 2 months to find any of the paintings. The Conversation was accidentally discovered during a separate narcotics investigation, and since the picture was not being actively looked for, according to the police report on the incident, its recovery was actually lucky. The second painting, Young Parisian, took even longer. The FBI in Los Angeles had heard the rumors about the theft in September of 2005 while searching into a Bulgarian criminal organization that was suspected of narcotics trafficking. They then detained Boris Kostov, one of the syndicate's leaders, who had later directed them to the painting. In his admission, Kostov acknowledged that the Rembrandt picture was located in Denmark. The FBI and Danish authorities in Copenhagen then put up a sting operation after having found an opportunity. FBI agent Robert K. Whitman posed as an art buyer and tried to purchase the painting for $100,000. 4 men would then be detained and sent to Sweden via deportation. The heist was successfully stopped, bringing relief to art lovers everywhere, as all 3 of the stolen artworks were found. Number 7. The Enron Scandal. One of the most prominent incidents in corporate history is the Enron scandal. It involves a corporation that was previously regarded as a prominent participant in the energy and commodities industry, having experienced a dramatic rise and an even more astonishing fall. Numerous employees, shareholders, and investors would all be impacted by Enron's demise, which also sent shockwaves all throughout Wall Street. After Houston Natural Gas and InterNorth had merged in 1985, Enron then set out on its adventure. Kenneth Lay, the company's CEO, had used the deregulation of the energy markets, which had allowed businesses to speculate on future pricing, to quickly transform Enron into an energy trader and supplier. The dot-com bubble of the late 1990s, when skyrocketing share prices were the norm, was a time of business success for the corporation. One of the company's key leaders, Jeffrey Skilling, joined Enron in 1992 and implemented the SEC-approved mark-to-market accounting system. The beginning of Enron's final demise came when it started to register estimated gains as actual profits, despite the fact that MTM is a valid procedure that can be manipulated. With the launch of Enron Online, a commodity-focused electronic trading platform, Enron's growth was continuing. It received recognition for its bold initiatives and would be recognized for many years as America's most innovative company. However, questionable methods like exaggerating predicted earnings and forming off-the-books corporations to conceal debt and toxic assets were the precursor to Enron's downfall. Even though no income had been produced, The corporation would create assets and then declare projected profits. Enron had appeared to be more profitable than it actually was, all thanks to this inventive accounting method. Despite the corporation's unethical actions, Arthur Andersen, one of Enron's major accounting firms, gave the company its seal of approval. Enron was having significant issues by the fall of 2000, having concealed financial losses and finding it difficult to satisfy expectations. The stock of the corporation began to decrease, and by 2001 it was in freefall. Enron's CEO, Jeffrey Skilling, had announced his resignation in August of 2001, and the SEC immediately began looking into the business and its SPEs. Former Enron CFO Andrew Fastow planned a method to conceal debt and losses by using SPVs. The release of information and revised revenue had caused Enron to file for bankruptcy in December of 2001. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act would then be passed in 2002 after the Enron crisis caused a large stock decline. Enron's auditing company, Arthur Andersen, would be found guilty of impeding justice by destroying financial records. Executives at Enron, such as Lay, Skilling, and Fastow, were all accused of conspiring to commit fraud and insider trading. The incident would result in enormous financial losses for shareholders, employees, and investors by eroding public confidence in businesses and the financial sector. Number 8. Match fixing. In 2005, German football would be hit by a match-fixing scandal that involved referee Robert Heuser, who had manipulated several matches on behalf of a Berlin-based Croatian betting mafia. The Heuser affair, a controversy that rocked the German football community, had caused quite the stir. The primary offender of this match-fixing scam was Robert Heuser. He had rigged games in the German Cup 3rd tier and 2nd division to profit from the wagers that were placed by his handlers. In order to affect the results of games, he took doubtful penalties and dismissed players, and had enlisted Felix Zweyer, a 23-year-old assistant referee, to help him in the scheme. Prior to a reserve match between two teams, Zweyer had accepted cash from Heuser, although he did not make any intentional mistakes. He eventually revealed his suspicions to the German Football Association and helped to expose the match-fixing scandal. The clubs and the players who were impacted by these manipulated matches were the true victims of the match-fixing affair. For instance, SC Paderborn eliminated Bundesliga team Hamburg from the cup as a result of a contentious penalty Heuser had called. HSV subsequently received a €500,000 settlement. Heuser would eventually admit that he had done it all, which resulted in his conviction and a refereeing ban. Heuser was given a lifetime refereeing ban in addition to 2 years and 5 months with a prison term. Due to his involvement in accepting money, Felix Zweyer was punished by the DFB and given a 6-month suspension. Heuser completed his prison term, but his refereeing ban is still in effect. German football referee Felix Zweyer is resumed to have worked after serving his suspension. Jude Bellingham's remarks on Zweyer's involvement in the Heuser affair stirred debate, with some defending Bellingham's viewpoint and others dismissing his claims in the absence of proof. Deliberations on accountability and openness in football officiating were also triggered by the DFB's handling of the match-fixing incident and Zweyer's disciplinary actions. Number 9. Cyber bunker scandal. The largest ever cybercrime trial in Germany began in the district court in Trier. The trial involved 8 individuals, 4 Dutch, 3 German, and 1 Bulgarian, who worked at the Cyber Bunker Data Center in a disused military bunker in Treben-Trarbach. They were charged with aiding and abetting criminals in nearly 249,000 illegal online transactions, which included drugs, contract killings, money laundering, and abuse of imagery, worth millions of euros. The Cyber Bunker Data Center was housed in a sizable Cold War-era military bunker, and the alleged ringleader, 60-year-old Dutchman Johan X, had purchased the bunker in 2013. He first committed to establishing a center for IT training and jobs in the neighborhood, but then broke his word. A significant police operation would raid the bunker in September of 2019, shutting it down and arresting important members of the organization. Johan X, who is thought to be the alleged ringleader, was not responsive when questioned in court. The defendants would be charged with operating a bulletproof hosting service that had permitted customers to conduct covert online business on the dark web. Johann X had provided the service from the start, stating that the cyberbunker would host any websites as long as they were free of crimes targeting children and anything related to terrorism. To ascertain the degree of criminal activities enabled by the defendants, however, detectives are reviewing the data on hundreds of real and virtual servers in the bunker. The trial was anticipated to go on for more than a year. The goal was to determine whether internet service providers were accountable for the criminal actions of their users. Due to Germany's stringent data privacy laws, it became essential for the prosecution to demonstrate the defendant's knowledge of and participation in the alleged unlawful conduct. The trial received a lot of media coverage, and the public closely followed the verdict. Many had seen the trial as an opportunity to re-examine data privacy regulations and the responsibilities of internet service providers. In December of 2021, the German court had convicted 8 people involved in operating the data center. Johann X was sentenced to 5 years and 9 months in prison, and 7 other defendants were given sentences that ranged from 4 years up to 1 year of a suspended sentence. Number 10. J.C. Dugard's kidnapping. When J.C. Dugard was found alive in 2009, the world became fascinated by the horrific and terrible story of her kidnapping and detention. The story of Dugard's kidnapping when she was just 11 years old, and then the subsequent 18 years in captivity with Philip and Nancy Garrido, is one of violence, deceit, and survival. Dugard was held captive by Philip Garrido, who had kept her confined to a shack in their backyard and mistreated her physically and emotionally. She was twice pregnant by him, and while she was being held captive, she had given birth to 2 daughters. The girls referred to them as their mom and dad, and they were brought up to think of JC as their older sister. The couple had brainwashed Dugard, constantly lying to her to ensure that she would not try to escape. They had even ordered her to adopt a new name of Alyssa in order to further control her identity and sense of self. Dugard's rescue came about when security officers at a local college had become suspicious of Philip's behavior and reported their concerns to the campus police. A background check would reveal his criminal history, which had included prior crimes. This led to a meeting with his parole officer, during which Dugard initially stuck to the false story of being Alyssa. However, after he confessed to kidnapping and assaulting her, she finally revealed her true identity. Philip and Nancy Garrido pled guilty to Dugard's kidnapping and assault charges. Philip would receive a sentence of 431 years to life in prison due to his status as a registered transgressor before the kidnapping, and Nancy was sentenced to 36 years for aiding and protecting. After her rescue, J.C. Dugard wrote a book titled A Stolen Life, where she had shared her story of captivity and survival. She received $20 million from a victim compensation fund. Since then, she's been living a private life with her 2 daughters, seeking to heal and adjust to a new life away from the public eye. This case has raised awareness about the dangers of child abduction and the importance of protecting vulnerable individuals in society. What did you think about these heinous crimes and the people who committed them? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.